Hello, and thank you for joining me for the Monday night edition of Evan Silva's matchup column. The first game of the rare Monday night doubleheader sees the Texans at the Saints, with the team totals being Saints 30 and Texans 23. Texans-Saints is the highest totaled game on the Week 1 slate with 53 points, boding well for Deshaun Watson to immediately capitalize on left tackle Laremy Tunsil's acquisition, Will Fuller's return to health, and Kenny Stills coming aboard as insurance on ankle-hobbled Kiki Cutie. As Houston is a 7-point road dog, it's notable that Watson's career yards per pass attempt spike from 7.4 when leading to 8.7 while playing from behind, and his yards per carry elevate from 4.8 to 6.2 when rallying back from deficits. The strengths and weaknesses of New Orleans' defense don't really come into play here. Watson was established the run's top-ranked quarterback in season-long drafts, and he is the best fantasy quarterback play on the Week 1 fantasy slate. Comeback game script sets up perfectly for all-purpose dynamo Duke Johnson, who leads all NFL running backs in yards per touch with 6.5, since entering the league and should dominate snaps over Carlos Hyde, who will prove useless in fantasy football as an inefficient two-down grinder on a team that can't run block. Johnson does need Watson to begin accepting high percentage checkdowns more to realize his full PPR potential, however. Likelier to scramble when his downfield progressions are covered, Watson targeted running backs just 4.2 times per game last season. Nevertheless, Johnson is a quality running back 2 or flex play in PPR leagues with upside for more in this projected shootout at the Superdome. DeAndre Hopkins has never faced Marshawn Lattimore in the pros, but figures to draw his shadow on Monday night. Hopkins' physicality, route creativity, mind meld with Watson, and boundary dominance make him the NFL's most matchup-proof receiver, however, and like his quarterback, Hopkins eats when chasing points. Hopkins' career yards per target hike from 7.8 to 8.7 in trail mode, and his touchdown rate, touchdowns per targets, jumps from 4.8% to 5.6%. Will Fuller projects to draw the easier end of New Orleans cornerback duo in Eli Apple, who PFF charged with the NFL's 13th most yards per coverage snap allowed, with 1.62, among 117 qualifiers last year. With 11 touchdowns over his last 16 games, Fuller should be teed up as a wide receiver 2 whenever active. Last year's Saints got torched deep, allowing the league's 10th most 20-plus yard completions, 57, and second most of 40-plus, 14. QT, with a high ankle sprain, figures to be limited if he plays, and Stills is in the process of digesting Bill O'Brien's offense after being acquired on August 31st. DeAndre Carter is another candidate for slot snaps. With Jordan Thomas, rib, and Kahale Warring, concussion, on IR, Houston's top 2 pass-catching tight ends are Jordan Akins and Jarrell Adams. A former baseball player drafted in the 2018 third round, Akins should be rostered in tight end premium leagues and seriously considered on DFS small slates in this likely high-scoring affair. The Texans' trade of Jadeveon Clowney and free agent losses of Tyrann Mathieu and Kareem Jackson enhance matchups for Saints skill players. A better run stopper than pass catcher, Clowney helped key 2018's #1 DVOA-rated run defense. Even as Alvin Kamara lacks the volume upside of fellow top 4 season-long picks Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, and Ezekiel Elliott, Kamara does more with less and shouldn't struggle to capitalize on Houston's weakened front. Kamara enters his 3rd NFL season with 32 career touchdowns in 31 games. Mark Ingram averaged 13.3 touches after returning from last year's 4-week suspension, which should be a viable number for Latavius Murray to reach in games where the Saints play with a lead. They project to do so here as 7-point home favorites, making Murray an underrated running back 2 or flex play. Murray stands to benefit immensely, upgrading from Minnesota's leaky offensive line to New Orleans' top 5 group. While 40-year-old Drew Brees' 2018 stretch run fade remains cause for forward-thinking alarm, this may be the best spot to play him all season at the Superdome in a likely shootout against a Texans pass defense that ranked 19th in DVOA, then got worse this offseason. Brees exploded out of the gates last year with a sterling 29-2 touchdown to interception ratio and 8.81 yards per attempt across New Orleans' initial 11 games, throwing multiple touchdown passes in all but 2. The Texans have allowed 2.1 more points per game without Clowney since 2014, which is an 18-game sample. With Burners, Ted Ginn, and Traquan Smith outside, Michael Thomas looks primed to set a career high in slot route rate after Thomas led the league in yards per slot route run, 3.63, in 2018. Former Jaguar Aaron Colvin struggled mightily in his debut season as a Texan slot corner, and the team is praying for a bounce-back year. Ginn and Smith are low-volume, big play-dependent dart throws matching up with frequent 2018 Broncos burn victim Bradley Roby and 35-year-old Jonathan Joseph. Ginn and Smith offer low floors but small slate DFS tournament appeal. Weak in coverage at inside linebacker and now missing Mathieu in the back, the Texans were smoked by tight ends all last year. Only the Colts allowed more yards to the position, and just 3 teams surrendered more tight end touchdowns. Jared Cook's risk is raised slightly after he missed the final 2 weeks of camp and preseason with an undisclosed injury, but his matchup and environment are quite conducive to a big first game as a Saint. Score prediction: Saints 35, Texans 27. The final game of Week 1 is the Broncos at the Raiders. The team totals are Broncos 22.5 and Raiders 20.5. Sportsbook spreads headed their way as the Antonio Brown saga unfolds. The Broncos visit the black hole under defensive-minded first-year coach Vic Fangio, who intends to play ball control offense with Joe Flacco managing games and rookie offensive coordinator Rick Scangarello leaning on Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay as the engines of Denver's attack. Ex-Falcons assistant Scangarello has likened Freeman's projected usage to that of Devontae Freeman and Lindsay's to Tevin Coleman as a straight-line explosive change of pace. Reports from Broncos camp point to a near-even split. Both Freeman and Lindsay are in running back 2 or flex play against the Raiders, who last year allowed an AFC-high 118.9 rushing yards per game and are without 350-pound plugger nose tackle Justin Ellis on the IR with a knee injury. Never a fantasy asset, Flacco is a low-end 2-quarterback league option even against an Oakland defense depending on top 5 reach Clelin Ferrell and second-year defensive end Arden Key, 1 sack in 644 snaps last season, to fuel its outside pass rush. The Broncos' weekly plans will involve limiting Flacco's on-field impact, and neither his own individual performance nor Denver's supporting cast create box score optimism for the low-efficiency 34-year-old passer. The Broncos' humdrum passing game doesn't set up as fertile fantasy grounds as an entity and depends largely on the health of Emmanuel Sanders, who tore his Achilles last December and is 32.5 years old. A truly healthy Sanders would easily project as Denver's target leader and a potential fantasy wide receiver 3, but I'm not personally buying that he's back to full strength. Sanders also ran nearly 70% of his preseason routes outside, where separation is tougher than the slot. The Broncos' primary 3-receiver set will likely consist of Sanders and Courtland Sutton on the perimeter, with Deshaun Hamilton inside. At least one will probably have a fantasy useful game considering their pass defense deficient opponent, but none stands out. For DFS small slate purposes, I'd bet on Hamilton leading the unit in targets and Sutton to see the most air yards. Underrated number 4 wide receiver Tim Patrick should mix in for at least a handful of snaps. Jeff Hoyerman is considered the Broncos' starting tight end, but first-round pick Noah Fant should force a timeshare early in the season. Still, this will be a fantasy situation to avoid until Fant emerges. Antonio Brown was established the run's number 1 shy away 40 fade, and again showed why when he threatened GM Mike Mayock physically over about $50,000 in training camp fines after practicing for 30 total minutes in August due to a strange helmet dispute with the NFL and foot infections. ESPN's Adam Schefter reported Thursday that the Raiders plan to suspend him. On the field, Brown is such a dynamic player that his absence would create a ripple effect throughout Oakland's offense, plummeting the fantasy outlooks of Derek Carr on down to the running game and Josh Jacobs, another member of ETR Shy Away Fades. Career role player Tyrell Williams would take over as the de facto number 1 receiver, with rookie PPR sleeper Hunter Renfrow in the slot, diminutive burner JJ Nelson starting in Brown's stead, and Darren Waller staying locked in at tight end. I will add necessary updates to this section over the weekend as the Brown saga plays out, but box score optimism should be limited considering Denver's defensive prowess. The Raiders are also missing both of their starting guards due to left guard Richie Incognito's 2-game ban and right guard Gabe Jackson's MCL tear. Broncos second-year edge rusher Bradley Chubb should eat against Raiders turnstile left tackle Colton Miller, while towering right tackle Trent Brown will have his hands full with left end Von Miller's edge-bending pass rush moves. We can certainly fire up Denver's fantasy defense. Score prediction, Broncos 23, Raiders 17. That wraps it up for the Week 1 matchups column by Evan Silva. Stay tuned to EstablishTheRun.com as he is updating his game-by-game breakdowns throughout the week, and we will see you in Week 2. Good luck.